Really appreciate everybody joining us today.
Yeah.
Um, we're going to walk everybody through kind of the state of gaming, jump in. We're going to have our two panelists here, obviously doing a lot more talking than me, which will be more exciting for all of you. But if we have things that we want to kind of jump in and out of, that'd be great. And if we want to kind of pop into the next slide, that'd be awesome. I'm going to do a little just intro on Social Bakers, give everybody a little background on what we do, who we are, and then we'll get into it. So, Social Bakers has now been around since 2008. We're really helping brands around the world to understand how they're performing on social, what to post, when to post, should they spend money on it, and ultimately, really, figure out how to benchmark yourself, automate a lot of your process, and really work through what you're doing on a day-to-day basis. We've got now over 3,000 clients. There's 13 offices around the world, and we've got 550 employees, which has been really kind of exciting. I've been here about 6 years, helped start our US office in New York. And Aaron was one of the first people that I signed in that time about 6 years ago, which is pretty funny. And we're still working together now today. So really, really
Oh,
pumped
wow.
to have him on here as
You
well.
haven't grown any
Yeah,
more hair.
yeah. This is my quarantine look, just trying to keep it together here. But yeah,
You guys are
what's really kind of
fine.
interesting is that gaming has, been a really big thing for our company as well. So Social Bakers, our team in Prague and our developers actually have, and they host these game nights, which are actually the pictures here that you'll see in the background. So whether it's pizza, definitely a lot of Pilsners rolling around over there then as well. But it's been something that's really been fun for everybody on our side, and something that we have a lot of passion about within our teams as well. So what I would love to do, if we pop to the next one, Annie, is I want to just kind of really quickly say hello to all the folks that are signed in. I'd love it if everybody could actually just kind of maybe comment where you're actually signing in from. I always like to kind of see where we've got kind of those, folks. If you go to the chat section or into the Q&A and actually just drop in there. Would love to get a little bit of interaction on these 50 or so people that we have on here, as far as where you guys are actually tuned in from. So let's see
That'd
if we
be
get some
awesome.
people kind of chatting. We've got London, Connecticut, New York
Wow,
City,
Croatia.
All
South
right.
Africa,
That's
Barcelona.
one way to wake up the chat.
Yeah. Some co-founder of Captain Esports on here. We've got
Wow.
Prague. This is cool. So we've got people
Yeah.
kind of signed in from all over, which, we've been hosting a lot of these webinars. It's been really kind of exciting for us to be able to include, great panel folks like you. If we have questions, I just want to let everybody know that if we want to kind of drop those into the chat, I'm going to do my best to moderate, go back and forth with Ruby and Aaron, obviously, on that. So if you have things, I saw some people commenting about God of War and wanting to ask you about that already, Aaron. So, well, I'm sure that'll come back to that. I think you
I
can't
don't
get
work
away
there
from it.
anymore. I
Can't
love
get
those
away
guys.
from it.
I have no clue what they're working on.
Yeah. So with that, I'll kind of just take a quick second to introduce both of our panelists. So Ruby, we'll start with you if we want to do a little bit of an intro, and then I'll
Sure.
let Aaron do a little bit of an intro on himself, and we'll kick off from there.
That sounds awesome. So I am a content marketing specialist at ArenaNet. I've been there for about 8.5 years now. Wow, time flies. I keep saying 8 years, and I'm just like, but how? When? So I work on our social media channels. I do a lot of interaction with our community, work at in-person events when they exist, and host our live streams where I help point a spotlight on our developers and let them talk about the awesome work that they do on our game. So that's me.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. And Aaron, I would love to have a little quick intro from your side, man.
I'll try to keep it quick. My name is Aaron Kaufman. As you can see on my title screen there, Director of Social Media and Community at Square Enix. I'd like to think it's Director of Social or Director of Community. To me, they're one and the same. I oversee all the what we would call the mothership channels of Square Enix. So the primary social media handles of Square Enix with my team, and then I also am a conduit and kind of a relationship partner to all of our studios, be it Crystal Dynamics or Square Enix External, IDOS Montreal, and then working with the Japan studios through our team in Europe, And so I've been at Square Enix for the long time of 3 months. That is the shortest time span of an intro I've ever given, because where I was previously at PlayStation, which I'll probably inevitably be talking about here quite a bit, I was there at Santa Monica Studio for about 8 years. And then prior to that, had a brief run at THQ, and then a pretty substantial run at EA for a long time. So proud to be here. Thank you, Bob.
Yeah, man. No, I'm pumped to have you. And I think, obviously for us, whether it's partners of ours, things that we've kind of seen going on, I think overall the gaming landscape as it is really kind of evolved. And especially with the pandemic and things that are kind of happening now, we have some really cool stats around what's happening as far as dollars that are being spent, time being spent. It's through the roof, obviously, on that, not only on the games, but social overall as well. So really excited to kind of talk through a little bit about the strategy, some of the predictions that you guys have coming for gaming, and then ultimately open it up to the audience, which hopefully we'll get some really good questions and get them picking
Yes,
your brains
please.
as well. I know everybody was excited to be able to jump in on those things. So with that, I want to talk through some of the trends, right, to kind of start, and then we'll kick it in back and forth with you all. So right now, what we found is, through the first quarter of the year, really interesting to see that interactions, right, are flying around here, and social time spent, especially here over this last two months ish that we've all been quarantined, have really been blown up as well. But what we found here that was really interesting is that the gaming and electronics industry is now the sixth highest number of those interactions. So this is something that's really kind of evolved quickly over these, now last 3 months, essentially, right, with that. So
Yeah.
really seeing now that huge growth across Facebook and Instagram has been interesting to me. If we pop to the next one, that'd be great. Um, if you want to go to the next slide, Annie, sorry about that. I thought what was really interesting for me is that through, sorry, if you go back one on that, that's my bad. For some reason, it wasn't showing up on my screen. So what I thought was really interesting is that Instagram overall, right, this is looking at just the 2019 versus 2020 year-over-year growth. And what was, to me, decrease in Facebook, actually, interactions went down. There was a substantial decrease on Twitter as well, but there's a major, major increase on Instagram here that was 160% growth, right, and change kind of in that. So just being able to start seeing the total number of interactions were up 62% overall, but just Instagram there, I thought this was really kind of compelling, seeing that 160% growth. And there's somebody asking, we will be sharing these slides after, so these will be things that will be sent around, so you don't have to screenshot, take notes. We'll be sharing all this deck and everything kind of afterwards. So no problem with that. So when we're looking at how we're evolving and how you're evolving too, as the brand signs, right, and being able to really kind of, I think when we even had kind of our pre-chats, being able to really make sure that we were paying attention to where people were talking, right, how they were talking about us, and I think that's a part that we continue to evolve, and where we're seeing Instagram really pop up on that. So that'll really lead me into just kind of opening it up to both of you and kicking this off. And Ruby, maybe if you want to go first, with everything changing as quickly as it is, how are you staying relevant on your side?
Absolutely, and I can address this a little bit. I also I really liked a lot of what Aaron had to say too, so I'm excited to hear more of that. But so much of it is about paying attention, I think both on the soft skills side, just looking and having enough of an understanding and paying enough attention to what your community is saying and what they're talking about and where they're talking about it, to know how to address the audience, so you're not just coming off like a robot with a megaphone and just barking these tone deaf messages at people. Realizing who you're talking to, and that's not a static factor, that's going to keep changing almost week over week sometimes. um, that is a huge part, I think, of what we do, and that's bolstered by, on the other side of that, that's bolstered by analytics and looking at those numbers, like this Instagram growth that you were showing, understanding, hey, this is a thing that we need to be paying attention to, because this is where our community is talking now, and if we're ignoring them, this isn't a great experience for anyone. We need to be paying attention over there, because this is what
Right.
actual numbers are showing us. So we need to understand what's going on and be able to have that conversation.
Yes, no, it's
Aaron?
definitely
Even just on that point, though, it's no surprise to me that Instagram is dominating because, you know, Instagram, it's 99% visual. Yeah, the
Mhm.
caption, the hashtag, that all matters. But in this kind of ephemeral world where we're just scrolling, we're looking at those Instagram stories, we're tapping,
Yeah.
right? What we want to keep doing is creating connections with people, whether it's our friends, our family, people we don't know. And I think Instagram is the creme de la creme platform for that. And I think people are looking for more emotional ways to connect, especially in this time of COVID, where we are so disconnected physically. We want to be
right.
more connected emotionally and online, and remember those good times and give a virtual hug and see how other people are dealing and coping. And Facebook is, with the algorithm and kind of the nature of Facebook, with people having
Yeah.
more of a mix of, like, I see a lot of news in my Facebook feed now, which is kind of cool. Like,
Yeah.
it's good for me. I
Same.
actually kind of, in a weird way, I use Facebook as a way to kind of keep up with news posts that I may not be aware of. There's like 5 or 6 friends on my feed that whose posts like constantly rise up, and I'm like, oh, that's cool.
Interesting.
And then Twitter is just like, fast moving. Like, what's the trend of the minute, right?
Right.
But those
Yep.
things move so fast.
Mhm.
But that Instagram is really where you get that emotional connection. And it doesn't surprise me that the percentages are where they are now because of that.
Yeah.
You know what? If I can, I would like to build on that a little bit because I see a comment
Sure.
in chat that was super interesting to me.
Yep.
Someone commented, I find it strange, and I completely agree with what you're saying on the surface of it. I find it strange that Instagram is growing in gaming, namely because Instagram doesn't allow for easy conversations. But what Aaron was saying, it's that visual medium that creates these connections.
Yep.
And just speaking from from the perspective of our game, speaking from the perspective of Guild Wars 2, so much of what I've seen is that people use Instagram in the context of our game to create those connections with people around the world who have this game in common, and they tell these stories. It's look at this gorgeous character that I've created. Look at this little world
Right.
that I have created that you are also a part of. And when we share those on our own Instagram channels and say, hey, here's something that another player has created, it gets such a fantastic response. And people use the visual medium to create little stories, and that connection is created through that world that they share within the game.
Yeah.
When I was
I
at,
hope that helps a little.
I agree with you completely, Ruby. When I was at Santa Monica Studio just a short 3 months ago, our Instagram account for Santa Monica Studio, we started it at 0, 5, 6 years ago. And by the time I left, it was, I think, approaching 400,000 plus.
Oh, wow.
It was, in the last year, it was growing at a rate that was easily 3x of our Twitter account, I think 5 or 6x of our Facebook account. And the average interactions were equally so. And one thing I noticed was whenever we would post God of War concept art from really any of our games,
Mhm.
for whatever reason, that kind of stuff would get our most engagement. It was either that or some kind of like big milestone. Um,
Really?
and to me, it signaled that, we're really tapping into the nostalgia, the thing that people feel loyal and passionate with our brand. They connect to our characters, to the monsters, to the art itself, and the appreciation for it. And people just have an affinity for that. And I feel I've been using
Yeah.
this phrase lately that on social, we're not just creating content to advertise, we're creating content that speaks, that has something
Mhm.
to say. When you
Yeah.
put a tweet out there, an Instagram post, a Facebook post, does this piece of content have the ability to spark a conversation, even if that conversation is 5 seconds? So, with God of War, if we're putting out, a development piece of what Kratos looked like before, before we gave him a goatee, that sparks conversation because people are like, oh, why did you let him grow facial hair? And now all of a sudden we've opened up this, this conversation about that. So that's what I find really fascinating about Instagram, is because you're challenged to put a visual up that's going to get somebody to stop and get them to talk about it.
Yeah.
And I think it's, like you said, the UGC stuff, and even some of the things, that you guys are reposting and putting back out, and just kind of continuing, we've talked through this a few times in the last couple of weeks leading up to this. It's just, how do you engage your audience where they are, right? And kind of continue to keep telling the story. I mean, this is a little, a chart that we put together that I think is really kind of interesting too. It's got about 400 different video games in it, right? And we will see both of your brands popping in and out of this, obviously based on timing. This is looking at it month over month, total number of interactions, right? On the posts that are going out there, you'll see Fortnite popping up everywhere here, right? I think that one's been the one that's been in and out.
Yeah.
Obviously, you were just talking about your kids playing it, kind of all over the place. But,
they're playing it with their friends, and that is, again, I joke about my daughter playing it. That's a connection that she has with her friends that she can't have in person right now.
That's interesting. Yeah. I find that everybody's looking for different ways to connect, obviously, right now, and have that human element of this. And we were even talking about, and Aaron had mentioned, when a brand, replies to somebody specifically, like, I get excited when a brand writes me, or comments back, or likes my posts or story or whatever I've put up at that point. So for me, that's always something that I think is, people may not think that much of it, but I do think it has that compelling effect, and especially now more than ever, with us having less and less of that going on.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, we could talk ad nauseum about engagement on media. That's gonna trigger me to sit here and talk for hours on hours about me without going on and on about it. Like, that's the reason I'm on this panel, this chat right now. Like, engagement is why we are in social. We're not there to talk to our communities. We're there to talk with our communities. And if we're not doing that, then we are not doing our jobs. If you want to go put up a digital billboard, go to Wilshire Boulevard and buy some space on the billboard by the freeway. But if you're going to start an account on Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter, be prepared to reply. And if you're not replying, you're missing the magic. You're missing the special sauce of it. That's it. When I hear that word, it's a good trigger for me, because it's something I'm extremely passionate about, and I know you are too.
Right? Yeah. I think, when we're looking at it, and also kind of staying relevant within the space, right? How are other things that are going to kind of evolve and come out? I mean, is PlayStation 5 actually going to come out next month, or in June, like they're talking about? Like, I feel like I've been reading so much about it. There's been so much controversy, things that are being leaked. And this is something that I thought was really just interesting. It's just influencer posts, obviously containing hashtags about the specific consoles. And obviously we see there's spikes, there's dips. Switch has been basically consistent across this the entire time, right? And I think that now kind of interactive playabilities and things that they've got kind of going on there has been really driving them, especially now during these last couple months, right? So this is just using some of our data here to basically showcase where those things are at and where it's going. If we pop onto the next one, I think, from my side, it's like, we've already kind of started touching on that, right? And obviously I see some people commenting on TikTok, which I'm going to ask you guys a little bit about too. But now, right, looking at how are we really kind of changing the game here with that stay-at-home side of it. And what we found was so many of these companies now, and folks like yourself, obviously, we saw record-breaking numbers in April, right? $10.5 billion being spent across gaming, right, overall, which is insane. So seeing where people are really shifting. I mean, I actually hooked up my old Nintendo 64 my mom randomly found when she was doing some cleaning up. So had that thing powered back up. Yeah, she was like, "Do you want this, or should I get rid of it?" I was like, "Please send that back to me immediately."
You like to not get rid of that? Oh no.
We are not getting rid of that. So so that actually just came back up for me during this time as well. But what I thought was really cool about this is that we started looking at even outranking things like food delivery, Zoom, and the conference that we're on right now, and those things. Like, these are the industries that are being mentioned the most, right? So to have gaming currently in that top three, and really peaking during this pandemic, I thought that was really kind of compelling and interesting as well. So when we're looking at, if we can pop onto the next one, Annie.
But I gotta
I
say,
would, yeah,
just to stop you real quick, you go back to that slide real
yeah,
quick. I am bewildered that fitness apps is at the bottom because I'm a fitness junkie myself, kind of, sort of,
yeah,
and my wife is using a Peloton app, not the Peloton bike. I'm using an F45 app. Like,
yeah,
everybody I know is working out at home with an app.
somehow,
So
yeah.
just like that boggles my mind.
I think
I
it's
guess
not
it's,
necessarily with the apps, though, is the thing. I know Peloton made their app free for a little while.
mhm.
Yeah.
I actually don't know if that, I think it was 90 days. I don't know if that has expired or not yet. Um, but a lot of people I'm talking to, it's just like, hey, I hop on my stationary bike and I watch a movie.
Yeah,
So it
that's true.
may just be that people aren't using as many apps. It may just be that a lot of good intentions ran out.
That's it. I
Yeah,
mean, we're all drinking a lot, so at least.
yeah.
It's
We're just
water.
not we're not
You really think there's
posting or
water in here?
talking about the food. Yeah, right.
I'm
I
in
love that.
Seattle, man. It's only 9:30 for me.
Sorry,
I
Bob.
love it.
Continue. I just
Yeah, no,
corrected your
this
point.
is what I want. No, I love it. Well, I think too, like, and I saw somebody else commenting the Nike app was
Yeah.
free as well. I think there's been a lot of that
Oh,
usage, and how do we take this content that's living there? Maybe we're all just not bragging about working out. I don't know. I'm not. I'm trying to, but it's like you said, with all the other extracurriculars, drinking and everything else that's happening, it's like I need to at least kind of have that, you know, some sort of a balance, right? But
yeah.
I'd love to kind of talk about, and Aaron, maybe if you want to start this one, how COVID has kind of affected the things that I know you're still new over there, at Square Enix, but like, how have you seen it kind of changing your day to days, how your teams are working, and really the stay home, kind of movement overall?
I think in a pretty cool way. So I'm relatively new to the Square Enix family. I've been there 3 months. I was literally in the office for 1 month and then stayed home half.
Oof.
But to Square Enix's credit, the company, like many out there, I believe, has done an incredible job of making everybody feel like we are still in the office, really through Zoom, through some stipends for employees to kind of help, fund equipment at home, the constant barrage of, not constant barrage, but like HR surveys. We've done all hand meetings through Zoom. Like, there's been a really concerted effort to ensure that leadership and employees' voices are connected, and I've really appreciated and respected that. I think from my own standpoint as a social media manager, um, I never quite realized truly how remote this job could be, at a full capacity, until I was kind of forced into the situation. I have a friend who works at Apple who's moving to Hawaii for 6 months to work remote because he can. And I'm like, well, I got my 4-year-old and my wife, and maybe we'll just, rent the home here and pack up and do that. Nobody will know. I could be in Hawaii right now. You don't know. Um, and I just think that, in general, COVID, in a weird way, has, I think, brought us closer together at Square Enix. The kind of the authenticity, kind of the transparency that you get when someone's just talking from their home or on their funny Zoom background. There's a different level of, like, comfort that I think people are feeling. On the flip side, the hardest part for me has, as a social media manager, again, has just been, I like to get up out of my seat a lot and go around and move around and talk to people. Social managers, we are dealing with anywhere from 20 to 25 people worldwide, different groups: PR, marketing, sales, customer support, other community managers. And a lot of them are in the office, and you want to get up, you want to go talk and have that face to face. In this world that we're living in right now, it's Slack, it's a quick Zoom chat, it's text on your phone, it's Skype, it's any of the above. So getting used to that has not been all that fun, but everybody's doing a great job nonetheless.
Yeah, no, I
Yeah.
think that's interesting. I didn't know if you wanted to hop in there, Ruby, with any other
Um,
kind of thoughts or ideas on that.
yeah,
Yeah,
I completely agree. I have to completely agree with Aaron's last point. I'm so antsy in my home office, and I had this spasm of missing, like, impromptu hallway meetings last week. I was like, man, I'll, like, go down to the kitchen at work for a drink and wind up having a 40-minute
yeah,
conversation with, like, 4 people, and we come away with all of
Yep.
these fantastic new ideas, or we've hammered out a problem that we were having. And that's a thing that I miss very much.
Yeah.
We've kept in contact. I feel like our company has also, ArenaNet's kept in fantastic contact with each other through 100 different chat channels, just like Aaron was saying.
Sure. Yeah.
Outward facing, working with our players has been a whole thing because they're at home too. We all understand that we're going through the same thing. If I can, I want to shamelessly brag on our devs for just a minute. The Guild Wars 2 development team has pushed 2 or 3 live content releases since we've been at home. They have done it remotely. We pushed our last one yesterday. They have kept to schedule. They have pushed every release out on time. They are superhuman. They are superhuman. I have no idea how they're doing it, but they are doing unbelievable work. The biggest impact that it's had on our releases is that for the release that went out yesterday, it hasn't been safe for our voice actors and directors and narrative staff to get together in a studio and do voice recording. So last month we had to release a video explaining to our community, hey, this is not safe, and that's our priority, is keeping people healthy as much as possible in the current climate. So here are a bunch of our voice actors that recorded on their phones at home, and we splice these together and we're letting them tell you. And that's the kind of weird thing that you have to do right now. And just understand that we're all dealing with this as best we can.
But you know what, Ruby? I think that's fucking cool. Like, it's not weird at all, because it's forcing us to be more transparent and authentic, like totally outside gaming.
Which I love.
Yeah. Like Netflix announced the Umbrella Academy season 2 last week, and the trailer was like, it was one of the most brilliant marketing stunts.
So good.
Ever. They had all the actors record the music video from season 1, episode 1 from their homes, spliced it together, no montage, put it out, and you saw all these actors without their makeup and their costumes and everything on, and I just thought that was incredible. And then I think in the gaming industry, I honestly believe that no industry is better at transparency than gaming, you know, and in a weird way, there's a lot of good and bad that comes to that, because the fans expect us to be talking every single second. You know, you look at Naughty Dog, you know, who I don't work there, but you know, I know the passion and heart that they're putting into releasing The Last of Us 2. And, you know, with the issue that they had, and now the kind of the barrage of comments that they're getting, using the Twitter feature to kind of block replies, you know, that's an interesting, fascinating world that they're living in right now to deal with that. And we know that, you know, the game is going to be incredible, and that's all going to turn around. But then you look at like Neil Druckmann, who, when the game went gold, he recorded on his phone a message to the fans, thanking them, congratulating the team, but it was from his home, and I thought it was one of the most authentic messages I've ever seen. And ordinarily, when a game goes gold, you know, you get you know, kind of a produced video, team photo. So, you know, I use the example of Naughty Dog because I'm good friends with, you know, my buddy Arnie Meyer over there, and you know, I have the highest admiration and respect for them, and I just think what they're dealing with is a really fascinating, interesting situation. At Square, you know, with Final Fantasy VII, we were put right, I mean, this is right when I started, we were put right in the throes of COVID dramatically impacting the launch of the game. And I was really proud of our company for putting out messaging, you know, a couple times a week directly from the team, you know, and a lot of the messaging was kind of the same. It was like, you know, we're not sure shipments are still on track, but we were just constantly being transparent that the game is coming on time. The game is coming on time. And I know it had a big positive impact on the fans' belief that, you know, we're still here. COVID is impacting us, but we're stronger because of it. The game's on time, etc. So I just to bring that home, I just appreciate that COVID is highlighting how transparent and authentic the gaming community is when it comes to social media.
Yeah. It actually, there was somebody that popped a question in too, if you don't mind me kind of throwing that at you both. Just kind of curious on your KPIs and how those have maybe evolved or changed throughout this as well? Or are there new things that you're looking at more or less, I guess, from that perspective?
Oh boy, that is certainly a question that has been asked. No, and Aaron might have. It's funny that you asked because we have been talking about that a little bit. A couple years ago, we did a campaign. We did a welcome back thing for players who were returning to the game. There's this thing, if you, with a live game with something like an MMO that is constantly progressing, if you've been away for a while and you come back, there's this feeling of, should I even bother? I feel like I've missed so much. There's no point in trying to catch up. Um, and some of us were talking, and we wanted to help players overcome that. If they were coming back, we wanted to help welcome them back into the game and help them catch up. So we did that a couple years ago, and we were talking about doing that again. How can we help returning players? Because we were seeing that spike in players due to COVID.
Cool.
And we started talking about KPIs, and it was just like, dude, I will cobble something together for you as best I can, but this is not the same world as when we did this before. So I will give you the best I have, and we will see what happens. So I don't know, Aaron,
Really
you might have something
yeah.
more solid, but we're just trying to navigate because it's like every week is something we haven't seen.
I mean, KPIs are very situational. So, you know, it's where there's he's a now good friend of mine, a guy named Sam Bonin is one of our senior digital analysts, and really brilliant individual. I wish he was on this Zoom call so he could hear me say that to him. But
Someone tell him.
He has been constantly reminding me about the art of UTM tracking, which is basically like, you know, tracking from social a customer's journey, you know, back to your e-commerce site and how many sales did it drive. And he's been advocating for a long time that our Square Enix social accounts are very powerful when we are pushing sales. So he has an example slide of, you know, this is from 2019 when the last Dragon Quest game came out. Literally a couple of tweets helped drive, you know, almost 6 figures in revenue, you know, back to our e-store. And then there's a stat that shows that our social media for the, you know, year of 2019 was driving, you know, almost a quarter of our percentage, you know, for our direct e-store. And so I think when we think about KPIs, I mean, the question of the day from the marketers is always, you know, what's the ROI? You know, why are we doing that on social? And so I think a lot of times that ROI is only as relevant as the beat that it's tied to. So, you know, is there a sale on the game? Is the game coming out? Are we driving pre-order? Is there new DLC? And I think the KPIs during those phases are kind of what I was talking about with UTM tracking to see, like, is our social converting people? Are you know, we've got them in the awareness stage. Are we getting them in the funnel to convert through our own e-store? But then everything in between, to me, is it's what's our engagement? And I love, I'm gonna put social bakers on a pedestal here, but the average interactions, my favorite stat of the platform, average interactions per 1,000, which is basically like whether you have an account that is 50,000 people or PlayStation with 5 million people, you can kind of equalize your engagement by looking at per 1,000 followers, what the average engagement per post. It's like a Nielsen rating is what the analogy I like to use it.
I love it.
And I use that with I use that with our executives to kind of illustrate, you know, how is Square Enix or Santa Monica Studio prior, you know, how are we competing with our friendly competitors, even though they may be this much smaller or this much bigger, and kind of relating that engagement metric to our activity. So clearly, if our engagement is down, then clearly we are not being consistent and frequent on social. Therefore, that is a KPI that I want to be tracking, because to me it tells us, you know, are we continuing the conversation? Are we staying above the, you know, are we staying ubiquitous? Is another word that's always great. That was for God of War. Corey Barlog would always say to me, he's like, we fucking need to keep God of War ubiquitous. Like, we got to keep it in the names and hearts of every single person. Like, we got to keep going. We got to keep going. And we had no DLC, no nothing. We just had this great single player game. But I think we did that with a lot of different tactics. So
for sure.
Yeah, I hope that helps your KPI of the answer.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, well, and even, like seeing, and obviously here we're looking at, dimensions and some of the other things like that. Like it just watching it from like whether it's a platform perspective, game perspective, it's always changing, kind of moving, right? So you having to be able to keep an eye on all that and stay relevant as well is another part of that. I wanted to maybe ask another question here. It seems like I'm loving the kind of back and forth. So, Ruby, I would love to kind of think through, right, the third question that we kind of have wanted to jump on.
Mhm.
So, when we're talking about game releases, right, the space between them, how does that kind of change your strategy, or how does that evolve, right on your side?
A lot of it, and this is something that we talked about when we talked last week, it is the direction in which the information flows. Big game releases, we're giving the information in that ramp up, and when the release happens, here's with teasers and preview videos and information about when it's coming and what to look forward to, what you can do to prepare, what you can do to get ready. All of that is us dispensing information and talking with the players about that and helping build that excitement and preparation. In between releases, after that release, you're ramping down. Internally, we're getting ready for that next release because you're always getting ready for the next thing. That's not necessarily outward facing, but to keep that engagement going, publicly, to keep that outward facing conversation happening, the information is now flowing toward, mostly in the form of UGC. Players are doing playthroughs. They're organizing hey, we're doing this run through this new map. We're working on this particular goal where we're helping do training events for players on super high level content. That kind of stuff, all of that information is coming in, and we're sharing that instead. So it's just that back and forth.
That makes sense. That's cool.
Yeah.
Do you have, like, Ruby, for Guild Wars? Do you have? I'm not an MMO player, but when you have like DLC, new characters, story, etc. Like, is there a point where do you guys like look at, okay, we're going to promote this for a month, or is it, does the dev team kind of look at it as like, no, we're going to promote this for a year, ongoing? How do you think about like the life cycle of those updates for your game?
Well, the cadence is much more quick than that. We just had a festival out in mid-April, and now it's mid-May, and we just had our last release out yesterday. So it's a much quicker turnaround than that. So there's not a ton of time for like a huge year-long ramp-up campaign, because things are just coming more rapid fire than that. It's a constant ramp up and then quick drop down and then back up to the next thing. So,
yeah, that makes sense.
I need a moment just to daydream about the luxury of like a year-long campaign to plan for a single release.
Well, it wasn't.
And I'm back.
A year long was probably a misrepresentation.
No, but I want to think. I just want to think about that for a little while because it sounds nice.
I think and apologies. I think what I was meant to ask, when you're doing a release for a game, like from a social media perspective, how long do you typically think of like the post-launch kind of promotion of that release?
Ooh. I think it depends on whether you're talking about a full release, are you talking like a full game or expansion, or just like a DLC drop like we do every couple months?
I guess like a DLC drop in your world, which would be
it
like
changes.
a new character, or
yeah, it changes. I mean, we're planning those maybe 3-4 months in advance. I'm kind of thinking internally without. There's a lot I can't say out loud, so I'm counting internally. 3-4 months are what we're planning internally. Several weeks up to a month if we get real excited about it. On the outside, externally.
Yeah, the reason I ask is because it's interesting that our dev teams, they put hours, days, months into these updates, releases, characters, and even like a movie that's taken 3 years to make, and then it's opening weekend release. it's one and done. And I remember on the gaming side, like we would talk about how, whether you're spending days, months, years on this one thing, and then it's out there, and then it's on to the next thing. It's just crazy, like with social media, how fast we're moving and how quick
It
we can
is.
get, and it
Mhm.
kind of brings the end around point of how important it is for us to stay relevant because of how quickly people are
Yeah.
forgetting. It's almost
Yeah.
like in crisis management, you kind of say to yourself, like, yeah, the game is going to be delayed and that's a big deal and we should get out there with a message. But how big of a deal do we really need to make this? Because are we just over analyzing it? Is the sentiment really telling us that thousands of people are talking about this, or is it a small core of people that are talking about this? And then you put that message out, with your PR team, your marketing team, everybody. And then 2 days later, it's like, next, you know?
But I think there's a lot to be said for that communication as well, because the thing that I've found consistently, and I'm sure you have too, is just that communication, letting them know letting the community know will almost always change the conversation to, what is the matter with you guys, to, hey, thanks for letting us know.
Right.
Not across the board. I mean, you have your outliers, but as a rule, just talking with them will change that conversation.
Oh, you got to do it.
And that's, yeah,
There's no,
you
like,
have
you
to
have
do
to
it.
do it. It's just
Yeah.
that it's sad and
What's it?
fascinating at the same time how quickly
Yeah.
it can pass.
Yeah, and that's when there's a lot of screaming and everything's on fire. It is kind of that, hey, this too will pass pretty fast. We'll be talking about something else and you'll forget about this.
Right. Well, and I saw somebody pop something into the chat, and I actually had a note about it as well. But when we're thinking about Fortnite, right, and now them even molding and kind of turning into almost like an ad platform, right, with the Travis
Yeah.
Scott concert and some of the other things. So one of the questions was, um, just thinking about that as a new kind of part of the space, right, and how people are kind of turning that game into a lot more kind of interactive capability on that. But also, um, are there any other games or any other folks that you see pulling off things or doing something, whether it's not necessarily that example maybe, but other cool things that you're kind of seeing where you're kind of compelled or driven by those ideas as well? It'd be interesting to see.
I mean, you've got Cyberpunk on here, and I think I think they've nailed it with the Keanu Reeves inclusion in the game. The
Oh my
timing on that
gosh,
is
yeah.
like dead on perfect. I think relating kind of an example like that of like hitting on a trend and bringing that into your game, um, it's all about timing too. So Fortnite, what Fortnite is doing exceptionally well is knowing their audience and timing. So like, Tenant, right? Like, um, they know that millions of people around the world want to see this movie. Deals with time travel. Gamer audience is going to be huge for that. So I thought it was a brilliant move for them to debut the trailer in the game, just like Star Wars did with J.J. Abrams showing the trailer for Star Wars. Having like the TIE fighter fly in and stuff like that. I mean, they're basically like Fortnite is almost like the virtual Coachella for events, and it just happens to have a game in it. Um, I think the the kind of the lie is that everybody wants to be Fortnite now, and I think that's a false path to go down. Like I've heard conversations in our own company, like how do we create the Travis Scott Fortnite moment, and it's like they were probably planning that for a year out, and they know how big Travis Scott is being, and they know how successful their Marshmallow concert was. They've created a game with a vision. Fortnite was not that 3 years ago, but they probably had a roadmap that was like, one day we're going to have live events in our game and debut a Star Wars trailer, and that's the dream. But you gotta figure out like what is special and true to yourself. For your own game, how can we create
Right.
something of that aura, but we're not going to have Travis Scott come appear in Final Fantasy VII, for example, right? So I think a lot of it comes down to foresight and long-term planning and creating a platform that allows for those things and the willingness to
Yeah.
be bold, take a risk.
Yeah.
That long-term planning, I think people don't necessarily realize the sheer length of time it takes to get some of this stuff done. Because you're right, they were probably planning that for a year, and I almost wonder if that's conservative. The the amount of lead time you need for things is staggering. I think if you don't already know and you haven't already been through it, to do it well and to do it without cutting corners and rushing and pulling off heroic efforts is
Yeah.
huge.
Yeah.
I think
yeah. Go ahead, Aaron. Sorry.
Oh no. Well, I was going to say, like, to that point though, on the flip side, with the COVID impact, the gaming sports industry has done an incredible job. NBA 2K, involving the the NBA players, the MLB MLB The Show getting broadcast on ESPN with players.
They've been
So
super nimble. Yeah.
yeah, so like where Fortnite, I'm sure, is nimble, but also like kind of big picture plan, and they know what the concert and the movie premiere is going to be. They probably got John Wick 3 like teed up, a year from now, Matrix, whatever.
Right.
Massive credit, to the sports gaming world being nimble and getting players actively involved.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of the Fortnite effect. It's kind of like, how can we make our game more appealing and connected with mainstream culture, but in a way that is authentic and true to us.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I think and I see a couple people asking if that's even a reasonable, kind of agile enough, year out. Is that as fast as social's moving now, right? Like being able to kind of plan and have those things, like that's kind of the stuff that, trying to be relevant, but trying to be thoughtful, kind of on brand for your brands or, your audience. Those are the things that I think takes a lot of talent, takes a lot of time to be able to, kind of conservatively push those messages as well, which is the, kind of tough part sometimes. But
well, the fast-paced part of social, I think, to me, it's. I mean, on one hand, we've got games with microtransactions and dev teams that are nimble enough that they can create character skins and things of that nature. League of Legends, Fortnite, for example, and they could react to those things. But I think the where people need to work harder on in the kind of this fast-paced social world, myself included, is responding to trends, just response engagement. If I need to wait, 2 days from a PR team, all due respect, I love my PR team, but if I got to wait, 2 days for however many people to tell me I can respond to this person, the moment is gone, and the company that's doing a great job of fast-paced social is Netflix, and they're outside of gaming. But you look at that. We talked about it on our chat last week. They had that one infamous tweet. It's gonna make you cry, which is basically
you are gonna make me cry.
What does the brand account say during sex? And Netflix had hundreds of brands, except for Ruby's.
Leave me alone.
But I just thought, like, all the brands, and I know you want to, so this is not your fault, but like all the brands that interjected in that conversation to be part of it was beautiful. Or you go back to like the Dunk in the Dark with the Oreo at the Super Bowl, right?
So that was fantastic.
Those are like outlier phenomena examples, 1 in a million, right?
Yeah.
But they're not all. You're not going to achieve that with all of them, but it's, how can we be inspired by it and be able to react and move quick?
Yeah.
I'd love to. I know we've got about probably like 5-10 minutes, maybe more left here. Love to just kind of dig in on predictions. I know everybody always asks these types of things, and really kind of thinking through, where do you really see, I don't know, what's the next piece that you're focused on, if you can share, or what are the things that you're excited about, being those leaders in the space?
Aaron, go ahead. I cannot share the next thing, so I'm thinking of something else. So you talk.
I love. I guess for me, part of it is I think gaming is heading back to a place where characters matter. Single player matters. People are looking for characters and stories that they can aspire to. And I love that Microsoft is doing this. I love PlayStation with all the first party studios is doing this. And I think, as the slide says, that comes back to a more human approach. So, with games, I think it's a combination of I think we're going to see an increase in single player games with characters that people can relate to. I think we're going to see a dramatically continued strong uprise in esports and gaming as a platform for events for mainstream culture, be it Fortnite. And then I think the part that's most meaningful to me is that kind of that meaningful engagement. That, you know, how can we make our games relate more as humans? You look at Animal Crossing, you know, people using the game to get married or create their own universes in, or Dreams, Minecraft.
Yeah.
You know, these games that are inspiring people to just create. You know, and so giving gamers more opportunities to kind of create their vision, their creations. I think is going to be a really, really, really big deal.
Yeah, I completely agree. Something that you mentioned, there is this jumped over to, I believe, Final Fantasy. There is a thing that we did for several years in a row in Guild Wars 2 called friendships, because a big part of our community is those friendships, those relationships of all kinds that are formed in our community. And one year-over-year group that we've all known as a company for a very long time is a guild in our game that has come, and they've come to some of our in-person events. They've created some fantastic in-person replicas of items in our game and given them to us as thank you gifts for making this game. And last year in 2019 friendships, I think, they let us know, hey, in part because of the Guild Wars 2 friendships thing, you've strengthened our friendships, and these two friends have turned into a ship, and we're getting married, which was fantastic. And then COVID hit, and they had a ceremony in Final Fantasy 14 recently instead, because they play so many games together. And that's
awesome.
Yeah, it was fantastic to see. But that is that combination of gaming and social, where it's this group that has made connections. It's people that have made connections, and you see this all the time. It's not even necessarily about the game. That's just a conduit for what they do together, and they make these connections from huge distances. And I think we're going to keep seeing more and more of that.
That's cool.
I love that point. I would dovetail that to say a friend of mine, a guy I used to work with, his name's Nick Clifford. He works over at the director of marketing for Phoenix Labs on Dauntless, and there was a great article that he wrote for GameIndustry.biz the other day, and I think and it was all about the community engagement they're doing with that game, and I strongly encourage everybody to read it. It kind of has these 5 points that I really resonated with, and the one that I kind of connected the most with was, he says, feedback is a gift. And I think, you know, whether it's, you know, the way games have allowed players to give feedback through social media, and developers are being more transparent and listening, versus the kind of quote unquote feedback we give to players by giving them a game that enables them to have these social experiences, whether it's Final Fantasy 14 with the wedding, or formerly someone who passed of COVID. Thousands of players came together to honor and kind of have like a virtual somber funeral for that person in Final Fantasy 14, Animal Crossing, you know, Dreams, you know, these games that are giving players the opportunity to kind of create their own experiences in very frictionless ways. To me, that is kind of like feedback is a gift, because it's the development community of gaming is listening to what players want, and honoring them by giving them platforms to, you know, realize their own creations. So yeah, I think future of gaming, feedback as a gift is a big phrase that I won't be forgetting anytime soon.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. I'm gonna jump into the Q&A, and we'll do maybe about 5 if that's cool with you guys. I know we're gonna go a little bit over. Is that okay?
I've got 5 minutes.
Awesome.
5:10.
So one of the questions that came in was talking about shifting budgets, right? And now with the crisis and the pandemic and us trying to really engage our audiences, Is this something that you're feeling either of you are seeing more of to really go out and ultimately engage that specific audience that is being a little bit more active within the games or within your audience, and how is that kind of shift focusing around the community and just social overall for your games or your brand?
I feel like Aaron and I are both looking at each other like, no, you go. I'll go ahead and just address that kind of from a high level on my end. I haven't seen it hugely. A lot of what we're doing is actually something that you showed earlier, are smaller and more personalized engagement bits, like the Arena Pets thing, where I saw that everybody was talking about their work from home colleagues. And I was like, hey, who devs wants to share pictures of their pets? And then I was immediately trampled by like 40 devs. We're doing we're relying on a lot of smaller things like that. There hasn't been like an enormous title budget shift. So I don't know. How about you, Aaron?
Could you repeat the question real quick, Bob? I'm sorry, or Ruby.
Yeah, that's okay. So more was just kind of curious on if you're seeing or if you're beginning to shift any of the budgets around spending to the more engaged audience that's actually happening now, and how are you kind of engaging with them in that community sense?
To be quite honest, I do next to zero paid social in my world. Where my budget goes is, to subscribing to platforms like Social Bakers. I leave the paid social to the marketing team.
Awesome.
You've got an interesting example up there on the slide there from my former job, which I think is an example of, with God of War, I'll use that, the story of God of War, and this relates to the question about budget. The story of God of War is about a father and son on an incredible journey. It's really about their relationship together. It's not about the end goal, which is spreading the dead mother's ashes on top of a mountain. It's about their bond that they make. And so obviously Father's Day was a really, really big deal for us. And we knew that mothers and daughters, fathers and sons were connecting, and really this game was inspiring them. So we thought, hey, for Father's Day, 2 months after the game came out, big deal. First of all, we dropped the price on the game because we knew that people were going to be thinking about it more. So let's put it on sale to get it in more people's hands. And then we thought, what's a way that we can, on social media, connect with people, to kind of bring about their nostalgic feelings of the relationships with their parents. And so we created this series of Father's Day posters where whether it's mother daughter, father son, etc. When you're kind of interacting with your child, in the outdoors, you think about going fishing, you think about going hiking, you think about throwing a football, and how would we bring those things into the God of War world in a way that would connect with our community? So we're like, okay, well, if Kratos is throwing a football to his son Atreus, it's not a football, it's actually a severed head, this character Mimir that he wears on the side of his belt. So we created a poster that you can see there with him throwing the head to his son Atreus. And these posters were like bringing real life, parental connections with their kids to life. And so we partnered with the company to create them as real posters, put them out there on social, limited time, limited run. And this activity was strictly meant to help bolster awareness for the game. We'd also created a new Father's Day trailer for the game. So it was meant to kind of complement that on social with a merch aspect, kind of that 360 effect. And that was me coming to the table saying, hey, here's a budgeted strategic proposal for a tactic that we want to do with social, with licensing, how that kind of all works together to benefit, the life cycle of this game, which is it's on sale right now. So when I think about budget, it's always in a sense of it's kind of beat to beat. I guess I'm maybe of a rare or not rare breed that doesn't usually have a budget as a social media manager. So I don't have the liberty of just boosting a post on Twitter or Facebook every day. That's not my job, or it's not part of my current job.
Not yet.
You sound like you know something, Bob.
No, I'm just kidding. I feel like he's always
I
got
got
his
time
hands
for
in
one
on
more question, Bob. I'm so sorry.
That's okay. I mean, honestly, I think we covered a ton of stuff. I think I think we wrap it here. What we're going to do is we'll send out the deck to everybody. I really, really appreciate both of you joining. Awesome to kind of hear all the different angles and ideas and things. And I'm sure people, if they want to reach out to you, they can connect with you on LinkedIn if you see those notifications. Just kidding. But I wanted to just really thank both of you guys. This was really fun. Annie and Lindsay for putting together all the data, the deck, and really getting everything kind of sorted from our team. But if there's anything you wanted to, say to kind of finalize everything, or anything else, I think if not, we can, I really appreciate you both joining on today and doing this with us. This was really fun.
Thank you for having me. This has been actually super educational for me too. So thank you both.
Yeah, good, awesome.
Yeah, I got so much left to say, but nothing left to say. So yeah, this was awesome. I really, really appreciate it. This was a lot of fun to be part of. So thank you.
Awesome. Well, I'll share everything out shortly with everybody that was the attendees, and thank you both. We'll chat again soon.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Awesome. See you guys. Thanks.